African diaspora. And Bryan went to Ghana in the late 1980s, and this is a painting that emerged from your journey, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, it's always very difficult to talk for me and to be articulate about a work that is visual and extremely complex overall. I can only probably attempt to tell part of the story behind the work. In the 1980s, I had some opportunity who nurtures a black woman in general, tend to nurture a white child, so to speak. But the real word from Twi is Nana, which means nurturer, and that comes straight out of West Africa. And I grew up hearing about and being told about Nani, and Nani or Nana, of course, is one of my descendants, or I am a descendant basically of Nani, but the other way around. Well, she's in the present continuous tense. She doesn't die. Her spirit is eternal. She is one which, as part of, I chose to interpret her as Oshun, goddess of fresh water, of spirit, and also by inserting those horns on her, which is all she had. She didn't, at the time in Jamaica, have the gold and diamond from the Ivory Coast, or from the coast, the Gold Coast, which she was from. She went to Jamaica as a child. She was forcibly taken there by Europeans. And of course, I chose to put that horn on her because that's all she had in order to rebel. That was her crown. And while the British soldiers would look at her and say, what an aggressive woman, and even in our times, women are not supposed to be aggressive, so to speak, or they're supposed to be. But the era I grew up with was a woman in Jamaica, and her name is Grande Nani. I wrote a little about her here, and I'll try to, so that I don't go too much off in talking about her. And another factor I wanted to bring in when I was doing this painting, usually a new black woman doing ritual dance is a taboo in puritanical New England. Mm-hmm. You know, you never see an image like that in general. And I remember in Brazil observing a number of rituals of women being adorned and being initiated. I was asked to go into certain rituals because the nanas there would identify me without even having met them. They would point out and know that I was maroon from Jamaica. Nana was seen as a maroon woman, and it is a bit radical for institutions, I think, in America or say Boston to have an image like this in them. I would like to thank Martina for being so radical and open, because Oshun is really a very radical image, and when one studies her, one would realize that she is a spirit and a presence of resistance in every way possible. Academic institutions in this and previous centuries have hardly acknowledged the presence of black women aesthetically, socially, or say, for example, Hollywood, etc., etc. I sought knowledge in order to truthfully create a ritual dance, identifying this protagonist as Queen Nani by traveling to Brazil on a Ford Foundation fellowship, as well as going to Africa on two occasions just to seek her out. When I was a kid, a little boy, my grandfather, who was a Maroon leader, Colonel Harris, used to talk a lot about Nana and Nani. He was a Maroon leader, and he took her mantle in the sense that she was a Maroon leader during the time of the 1800s. And she actually fought the British and won. It's a war you don't hear very much about, but she won, and her cohorts, her brother signed a contract with the British government and the Queen then to actually give thousands and thousands of acres of land to these Jamaican Maroons. And of course, up to this day, they do possess that land. And because she was from Ghana, I wanted to insert, the kente cloth as part of composing this composition. I sought a lot to understand the real implication of these weaved material, as Napoleon probably is most knowledgeable about. And of course, kente cloth, you're wearing some samples here. There are the oversimplified and commercial types, and then there are, but it's a royal material. These were given to me by my grandmother and my godmother, who actually had some of these kente cloth for many, many years. I did an entire series of work during the 1980s based on the kente dance, kente cloth. I even had a big solo exhibition at the Commonwealth Institute in London, and called Kente Dance. So this piece is related to that old series. I've never really been able to show the full, I would say, series or glory of that series, given the size. I usually work very large, so I do have a number of them in storage in Jamaica, in China, that's Beijing, as well as here in Boston. And I'm not as strong again. To pull out those works, those big heavy stuff, I'm trying to keep my energy. But I do have a number of these works, and this is just one piece. I also wanted to say that, putting this in another context, that when I did this piece, I was in my early 20s, and maybe 22, 23 years old, I think. And nowhere around Boston wanted to show images like these. This was not, and of course that was normal because it's not a commercial work. It has a spiritual content and the idea of resistance and that of telling a story that is usually suppressed throughout, that actually exists in Boston. There are many Maroons who live in Boston. They're right in front of us too. So I'm very proud, and I'm very kind of like pleased that this institution could go beyond the narrative that it usually carried, of showing maybe, say, Golden Age, when Rembrandt may have painted a few black Arabic men, or, for example, showing wonderful works going much more in extent in the story, other than the upper class woman who painted Robert Freeman, who struggled so hard and actually made it so that they could be upper class, and that you could create such beautiful paintings of those women in their white adornments. But the idea of the contrast, this work has a lot to do with extending the story, the half that has never been told. Going beyond, I wrote something that I wanted to talk about. I need to really read, for example, the kind of Maroon people, what the Maroons are like in a sense. And this is just a poem that was written by my father. And this was published in 1962 when Queen Margaret visited Jamaica. And she visited Jamaica instead of her sister, Elizabeth, who just died. Prince Margaret came. So my father wrote this poem, and he became a little famous because of that. And being a Maroon who was writing about a British queen. And I just would you like to hear a few words? But it's very interesting, I look at him and he was younger than me at the time. Well, yeah, he was much younger than me at the time. It says, bring back saints of yesterday, I plead, that once again my princess I shall see. Such lovely human frames of rare design, Jamaica's princess, lively and divine. Those lips like rosebuds sprinkled with the dew, a smile angelic descended to our view. Bring back those window beams that ever shine, like diamonds that illume a secret mind. How glorious is thy presence, princess of the song, but in our hearts and bitter tears are long. Beautiful vision, please come once again. Come soothe our sorrow and relieve our pain. Thy absence leaves a bittersweet on our tongue. Our lips will murmur, though in joy we sung. So take the wings of angels and be back here soon, covering our discords and perfect all of ill of thee, whatever. Let me just skip some and just do the last two. On Titchfield Hill, that is important where most of the Maroon lives, we stood while sunshine ray shone upon thee with such a warm good day. May guardian angels, Virgil, at thy side, as thou wilt cross the ocean deep and wide. I watched thy vessel as it left the bay. I watched it though to a tear were in the way. Over thy ship, Britannia, may angels' wing now spread, gathering eternal blessings on your royal head. Now, my father was a very, a radical person. I grew up hearing him talking about the history of the cockpit country in Jamaica, the Maroons, etc. So when he wrote this, and then I read it later on in my life, I was shocked. But then, then of course, it just shows how people of African descent did not necessarily see the crown as necessarily always as a threat, but they saw the aesthetic beauty, they saw necessity, that of all the gold and so on, a lot of it that is in the kingdom in Britain were taken from the Gold Coast in Ghana. So my father, the Queen, and so on, they're very aware, they're on the same page. And so the horns are significant. She's not wearing the gold and the diamond and the rubies, or any of that. She's not decked with that in the ceremony or dance. She wears just the bullhorn from those oxen that were eaten when she fed children, so that they could survive, so that I could survive up until this time. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I didn't say anything that I wrote here or came to say to you, but it's a painting that means a lot to me, and I hope you will continue to encourage the artists and the younger ones who is coming to reflect and see the richness of their African past.